why do you think Brando came up with, or was it Brando that personally came up with this thing, or was it like a movement somewhere in the back where that like inflection point happened?
So we go back a little bit in time.
Yeah.
Now we go back to the end of the 19th century. There is a Russian gentleman, and his name is Konstantin Stanislavski. He's an actor, he's a director, he's got a theater company in Moscow called the Moscow Art Theater. And he is extremely obsessed with trying to figure out, how do you make acting more consistent and real and believable? I don't want the big drawing room kind of, right? And also, even if I don't want to tell these stories, if I tell real, true social stories, how can I get my actors to be consistent on a Thursday night and on a Friday night, on a Saturday night, on a Sunday night, where previously you could be really brilliant on a Thursday night, and then all your friends watch on Thursday night, oh my God, Taka was so brilliant. You tell all your other friends, okay, go on Friday night because Thursday night I had a damn good time.
Right.
Another group of friends come on Friday night, I heard he's going to be really, really, really good. Come on Friday night, and because there's no consistent way of working, you absolutely just suck balls on Friday night. And then the second group of friends tells the first group of friends, yo, I thought you said he was like the bee's knees. What's going on? Right? And so Stanislavski said, okay, this clearly cannot do. We've got to find a consistent way of working on top of trying to find a new way of telling stories.
Okay.
So with his group of actors, he decided to take basically, this is very broad brushstrokes, every example of acting that existed, every different example of exercises in relation to the development of the actor that existed, all the Socrates principles, all the Plato-like principles in relation to acting, all the Diderot philosophies of acting. And he said, all right, let's just test everything out so we can come up with like, what are the consistent qualities one needs to play the part. And he came up with what is known as the Stanislavski system. And from this system, every single modern methodology of acting has stemmed from his system.
Right.
And so then what you had is, in now the English-speaking Western world, you had a man by the name of Lee Strasberg, who then went, oh, okay, now that I know this exists, and I won't go into details there, but basically he finds out this exists, let me focus on a certain part of his work and let me develop my own methodology of acting, which basically revolutionized acting in the English-speaking Western world. And from that, he trained a bunch of people who would later on start their own methodologies of acting, and he began to train people who would be, who we classify now as the greats in acting. Your Paul Newmans, your James Deans, your Marilyn Monroes. They all trained, your De Niros, your Pacinos. They all trained with Lee Strasberg. And then what happened is, along the way, what you have is a maverick like Marlon Brando, who trained a bit with Strasberg, although he credits Strasberg with nothing. He says Strasberg was a major asshole. And then he trained with other people, and he picked up some other people. There was an acting teacher, her name was Stella Adler, who in many ways he regarded her as his surrogate mother because he had a very poor relationship with his mother. And so he went to different places, he studied with different people, but I truly believe that Marlon Brando was and is a once-in-a-generation or a multi-generation form of actor where he was almost, there was something very alpha male and brutish about what he did, but there was also something very soft and feminine and genteel and so sensitive about this big brutish character that he was able to appeal both to your alpha male man in the 50s, but also to the housewife who goes, oh, he's a heartthrob and he's so sensitive, right? And that's very sexist, but pardon me there. So now you're appealing to two different demographics. And this is a man who was so in tune with his physical instrument and his inner life that what you got was, I think if you genuinely asked him to explain his process, I don't think he would even have the words for it. I give a case in point, okay? My favorite film of all time is a Brando film, and it's probably the one that people say, oh, that's when acting changed. It just so happens to also be my favorite film. It's called On the Waterfront. And in the film, he basically plays a dock worker, and who carries cargo, ship worker, a factory worker. And as the film progresses, he gets in trouble with the mob for many reasons. And the film, without giving too much away, he he gets bruised and battered by a group of people, and in an act of sheer defiance, instead of staying down, he gets up and he walks back with this huge, heavy burden of having been almost having the shit kicked out of him, but this defiance of even if you beat me up, I'm still going to keep getting up and I'm still going to go back to work and you cannot stop me. And so there's a really iconic scene at the end where he's walking with this defiance, bruised and bloodied and beaten up, walking back to the factory, going back to work.
Yeah.
And for years, journalists had wondered, my God, Brando, there was so much that was going on in you. What were you working on? I don't want to talk about it. Don't want to talk about it. And then for years, journalists would hound him, like, we want to know, we want to know, we want to know. Towards the end of his life, and I don't know whether he was taking the mickey or not, but some journalists approached him and said, okay, you've lived a beautiful life. You've had such a varied career. Please tell me, 50 years on, what was your secret behind that walk with this defiance? And he said, truth be told, I knew that there was a porta potty in the factory. I just really needed to pee. And that angst and that agony in his face is supposedly just him with a really full bladder on set for the last God knows how long.
Right.
So
it worked.
It worked, right? But then, who the hell knows where Brando got his, that magical touch?
Yeah.
Future Design Podcast.